quickly now, and well, it seems very likely we're going to go back to large-scale warfare. That is, well, over the past few days, we've already seen that the U.S. have struck Iran, and Iran has retaliated. So we see that Israel's bombing of Lebanon has intensified, and this now, they will start bombing Beirut, it seems, or no, not seems, and the U.S. apparently have given a green light to do so. Iran then has responded by arguing that all fronts are linked to the ceasefire. In other words, you can't attack Lebanon, then we'll attack you. Iran has then withdrawn from the talks with the U.S. and, in the media, there's rumors, anything such as, well, a lot of things that could be done. For example, Iran could shut down the Red Sea. It's hard to follow. This is all happening very, very fast. So I was hoping if you could give a nice overview over what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so it started off about 10 o'clock this morning, East Coast time. So I guess that's like 3 p.m. your time. You're 5 hours different from me.
6.
6. Okay, so that is 4 o'clock your time, which means you're up past your bedtime. Thanks for doing this. And Iran said, okay, we're done talking to the United States, because the initial ceasefire, the agreement was that Israel would not attack Lebanon, not just Beirut, not attack Lebanon. It would stop its attacks of the Palestinians, and instead they're continuing. So we're out. We're not going to have any more talks. We're closing the Strait of Hormuz. Now, up to this point, Iran has allowed a number of ships to go through, and they said we're going to shut it down completely again, complete shutdown. And we're going to close the Strait of Bab el-Mandab. That's going to be shut down. They haven't shut it down yet. I think they were giving the United States basically 24 hours to see if they would go back to the original agreement that was signed. This got Trump's attention, because within an hour of that announcement, Trump's on the phone with Bibi Netanyahu. Now, here's where it gets confusing. Trump's version is he had a great call, and Bibi's they're not going to bomb Beirut. But that's not what Iran's asking for. It's not just don't bomb Beirut. Stop bombing Lebanon and stop killing Palestinians. Stop. Well, Israel's not willing to stop. And since that phone call, Trump's given one version, and Bibi Netanyahu is given a completely different version. And then you've got people like Smotrich weighing in, and Israel Katz, the defense minister, weighing in, and Ben Gvir weighing in. So, and it looks like Israel has not stopped. And so then here's a concerning point. One of the spokesmen for the IRGC in Iran, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, issued the warning: if you live in northern Israel, they refer to it as the northern occupied territories. If you're in northern Israel, you want to get out, because we're going to hit you. So they made it unambiguous. So I think within the next 24 hours, you're going to see Iran re-engage Israel with ballistic missiles and drones that will be targeting northern Israel. So this looks like it's heating up. Now, what's the United States doing? So far, on the military side of the house, they're not spinning up. And what do I mean by spinning up? Where, basically the air tasking orders go out, where you tell this squadron, okay, these are your targets. This is where you're going to hit. This is when you're going to launch. Now, a lot of that's pre-programmed, but before you don't just, because these were planned maybe 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. So you don't just grab it and say, okay, yeah, it was good 8 weeks ago, let's launch. No, you got to go through and check them. That's how they got into trouble with killing those girls at the school at Al-Minab on February 28th. They used some existing plans that had been planned before with dated information. They hadn't updated it. They hadn't checked it. So now, I think one of the consequences of that for new air tasking orders, they go in and have to verify and double check. So it was instructive that Trump didn't waste any time getting on the phone with Netanyahu. Now, Netanyahu's was telling the exact opposite, that he's not listening to Trump. Trump claiming that Bibi Netanyahu listened to him. So we'll see. We'll know whether or not if the attacks continue in Beirut and in southern Lebanon, then I think we're going to see Iran strike Israel within the next 24 hours.
Well, this should have been the key lesson from the war, though, that the Iranians are able to deter by going up the escalation ladder with the United States. So this whole idea that the US and Israel can simply say, well, let's do a limited ceasefire. We won't strike Beirut if you don't hit Israel. But again, it's open season on the southern parts of Lebanon. The idea that they would be able to decide how the war should be fought. There's no indications that Iran would go along with this. So again,
Correct.
This seems very, very predictable. But what do you think is the calculation now in Tel Aviv? I mean, are the Israelis, their bombing of Lebanon, is it deliberately to prevent Trump from making any extended ceasefire or peace deal with the Iranians, or is this just, well, they're just going along with their usual business?
Yeah, no, well, I think it's a combination of the two. I don't think it's an either or. They're convinced that they can beat Hezbollah, or they think they can, and that's why they want to blow up destroy that suburb. As Katz, Ben Gvir was saying, flatten it, flatten it, flatten it. Give it the Gaza treatment. But the thing we're seeing now with the tactics that Hezbollah have employed with the first person point of view drones that are fiber optic. Number one, they are immune to electronic warfare countermeasures. Number two, the drone operators, they don't have to expose themselves. It's not like in 2006 when they were shooting an RPG, shoulder fired. You had to get out and sort of, be visible. If you could see the tank could see you. And so they lost some personnel that way. This reduces Hezbollah's casualties, and they usually get to do it from underground bunkers. So and then the volume, I don't know what percentage of actual casualties, killed in action by wounded. Some of the public sources show that it's well over 1,000 wounded. The official death toll was like 24. I think that's not true. That's entirely too low. But an estimated 400 Merkava tanks have been destroyed. That's a lot of tanks. I mean, Israel's got thousands, I think a couple of thousand, but this is still a significant loss of tanks. And if you're losing tanks, that means you're losing personnel. Now, whether they're being killed or wounded, that's a whole nother thing. So Hezbollah is not going to stop this until Israel withdraws from southern Lebanon, goes back into northern Israel. Now, and that brings back Iran's threat. Tell them to get the hell out of northern Israel because we're going to hit you. That was the message. Because you don't tell people to vacate that area just because you're trying to create business for a moving company. They're going to hit it.
Yeah, well, I saw that the Israeli National Security Minister Ben Gvir, he was making the point that they should, at any opportunity, they should say yes when it's possible to the United States and no when necessary. And his argument was, when it comes to attacking Lebanon, it's time to say no to the Americans, or the American president, that this is something that Israel will do irrespective of what Trump says, which which kind of can be seen as another way now of pulling the United States back into the war, because if they begin now to intensify the attacks on Lebanon, Iran will then retaliate. Do you think it's any chance that the Americans will sit on the sideline, or is that, or
Yeah, I think initially yes, because America doesn't have any good military options. These are all Trump, according to Robert Barnes, and I think Barnes has good enough contacts still, despite him being seen as a critic now of Trump. He was Trump's lawyer, but he said that, you know, Trump was terrified of getting back into a Jimmy Carter situation where you got American hostages being held in Iran, because, you know, day one, day two, day three, you know, the news media starts keeping track of how long they're being held hostage, which becomes a measure of your own incompetence. So this is Trump's not eager to get back into that. And, you know, when you look at Iran has become pretty adept at shooting down drones. So if you can shoot down a drone, you can potentially also take down an F-16 or an F-18 or an F-35 or an F-22 or an A-10. Those are like the 5 major categories of aircraft that are in theater.
Well, Trump, you know, he took to social media as well. He was making the point that because of, you know, his call, as you said, to Netanyahu, that they're not going to march on Beirut. So essentially he took care of business. But
yeah, I mean, where did that come from? Who was talking about marching on Beirut?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I mean, Israel did it. What last time they did that was like 1982, I believe, 44 years ago or 34 years ago. No, it'd be 44 years ago. So, yeah, they've done it before, and then they go up, and then they get picked off and killed and wounded, and then they retreat and go back to Israel. So.
But what is the negotiation tactic here, though? Because it looks like Trump is sabotaging himself at times, because, you know, they're trying to move along the negotiations with the Iranians, and then suddenly Trump decides to elevate the demands of the United States when the initial demands weren't acceptable anyways to the Iranians. So, you know, it's not as if the Israelis are alone in sabotaging these talks. He seems to be doing this quite well on his own.
Well, in fact, the eerie parallels with the negotiations with the Russians over Ukraine, because the Iranian position has been unchanged since the outset of the war, when they laid out, you know, the 10-point and then the 14-point plan. And that was always immediate sanction relief, return the frozen assets, recognize we control the Strait of Hormuz, delay comments on the nuclear program. You know, they haven't deviated from that. It's the United States that keeps, you know, trying to change what we're going to talk about or what the position is. And Iran keeps, you know, they thought that they actually had some agreement on that. So, and then the United States, Trump backed away again. So that's why that was, I think, the frustration with Trump, coupled with the actions of Israel and Lebanon, that are just, you know, become untenable. They've killed close to 4,000 people now, just in the last 2 weeks, or last 4 weeks. So this ceasefire started, really went into effect like April 15th. And so it's lasted from April 15th through 45 days. So, you know, close to 7 weeks, a little over 7 weeks now, or coming on 7 weeks. But, you know, now Iran's been, with the United States trying to slip ships through the Strait of Hormuz, that has led to these new confrontations, and then led to Iran hitting the base in Kuwait. Now, notice it doesn't appear that any of these flights are originating out of Saudi Arabia in particular. Qatar is as well. If they were, then Iran would be targeting those bases in those countries. So far, the only country it's targeting is Kuwait. So, and this has been, I'm told, one of the issues that's been worked behind the scenes with the Pakistanis and the Saudis and the Qataris, that they're negotiating to get the U.S. out. The U.S. is going to be out of the Persian Gulf. You get this new security architecture. You get sort of a new ruling, let's call it NATO light, sort of NATO for West Asia, which will include Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Pakistan. Sort of the big four, which, could be interesting. And then, Iraq could join in as well. But the goal would be to bring in Iraq, bring in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, as well as United Arab Emirates and Oman, make them all a joint responsibility for security with no U.S. presence.
Well, then the NATO analogy might not be ideal, because in security arrangement, one usually divides, because NATO is a military bloc where country A and B seek security against country C, which is Russia here.
Right.
But like in these other security arrangements, they might be discussing now in the Middle East, it's not security against a non-member, but security with the other members, because I don't think anyone would suspect that Iran and Saudi Arabia would somehow ally up against the United States. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
so it is. But no, I agree. I think this is very significant, and I think it's in the interest of Iran as well, not to make it to reduce the zero-sum aspect of this whole thing. So what do you think is the significance, though, of Iran walking away from these talks? Because I sometimes think about the way Trump was negotiating with the tariffs. That is, first he'll come say, "Oh, I'll put 50% tariff on you," and then he'll scale it back to 15, and then the counterpart should be walking away being happy, even though there was nothing there before. And it seems a little bit like that's what he tried to do with Lebanon as well, saying, okay, we're not going to bomb the southern suburbs of Beirut, so now Iran should be happy, but, at least, this is what we'll give you, and, you should meet us halfway. You should let us bomb the hell out of southern Lebanon, at least. But the Iranians walking away, this is interesting, because they so far, for a variety of reasons, probably kept talks open all the time. They were willing to talk to the Americans. Why? Do you think this is just a pressure tactic, or have they given up on the ability to make have any diplomacy?
No, I think they've reached sort of a moment of a clear break. If the United States is not going to be serious, they're not going to stay tied to this. So Pepe Escobar and we received some information the other day, but we have it, and Pepe's in the process of confirming it. We'll find out. I'm supposed to hook up with him in about an hour at 5:30. We're going to be on a channel hosted by Zulfikar Ali. It's called Power Shift. But what we heard was last Friday, and we're confident in the reliability of the information, but you'll understand why I'm a little hesitant with some of the final details. The foreign minister of Pakistan spoke to Marco Rubio and told him in no uncertain terms, he said, this is where Iran is right now. If this does not get resolved, Iran is going to withdraw from the talks, which has now happened. It's going to withdraw from the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and it's going to set a date for a detonation of a nuclear device. Yeah. Now, so when I heard that, I went to this, okay, are you saying, and this is what Pepe's busy trying to confirm, are you saying that Iran has its own nuclear device now? Or have they been given it by another country like Pakistan or like North Korea? And our source says, I asked my source that. He's going to get back to me. So I know that's one thing we're trying to verify. But so far, what we were told Friday about they're going to withdraw, they've now withdrawn. So that turned out to be true. We'll see if this NPT thing is true. And if those two things end up being true, then I'm going to say they may not be bullshitting about the other. I don't, like I said, I can't confirm that yet. We're trying to get it confirmed. But it shows that the frustration level with Iran is real, and they are acting not on their own because they've had the full backing up to this point of China, Russia, and the Chinese are working primarily through Pakistan. And so Pakistan has played a lead role. Now this has got, this has created some of the confusion in the West because people say, well, Pakistan is so closely aligned with the United States. Yeah, but it is that has been true, and the history of it goes way back to the 50s with the CIA. And then the role that Pakistan played in supporting CIA operations against the Soviets when they were in Afghanistan in the 1980s. And then all the Pakistani contractors who made millions of dollars off of the United States government, who was needing to get supplies trucked in from ports, Karachi, into Afghanistan to support the 20-year presence of the United States in Afghanistan. But that said, there's also been a close relationship between Pakistan and Iran as they fought against the Baluchis. So the Baluchi population, the Baluchistan movement has been a thorn in the side of both Pakistan and Iran. And so they've actually cooperated on that. Then Pakistan's relationships with the Saudis, where they've actually signed in the last 2 or 3 weeks a security deal with the Saudis. So this is what's happening is the United States, the ineffectiveness of the U.S. military attack on Iran, I think has awakened a lot of doubts about the reliability of the United States anymore. And then so that's having a rippling effect as it affects a variety of these different relationships. This source also told us, though, or was in writing to us, that the Saudis and Qataris have made a decision, as well as Oman, to get distance themselves from the United States. And Qatar is talking about closing Al Udeid Air Force Base. That would be huge if that takes place, because that is the largest U.S. base and has been for, good Lord, 30 years in that region. So this thing's in flux. But the fact that Iran, I said we were told in that document on Friday they were going to withdraw from the process. They did that today. So I've got to, so the source got that information right. I don't know. I can't tell you about the other two.
Well, I truly hope they're not going to use a nuclear device. That would be very disruptive, and it would alienate their partners. Also they've been scoring a lot of points in the terms of how people view Iran. Like, I've never seen this kind of support for Iran. This was unthinkable. I remember 23 years ago during the invasion of Iraq, if anyone would have said there would be this much sympathy for Iran, it would be hard to believe. But again, I can understand why the Iranians are at least walking away now, because saying enough is enough on these talks. Because it's worth again remembering that if we go back, the U.S. agreed to use the 10-point plan of Iran as a point of departure, and then walked it all back. And and now slowly introducing more and more violence, a little bit like in Gaza. That is, yeah, here's a ceasefire, but we'll still kill Palestinians every day. And now essentially it's the same thing. This attacks on Lebanon. They continued also hostility against Iran. I mean, there is no real ceasefire. So what they're demanding from the Iranians is, you live by your commitments, we'll walk away. It just, but how?
I think, and let me emphasize, they weren't talking about using it against somebody, but it was to demonstrate we got it. So leave us alone, as a way to do it as a deterrent for a future attack. I think that was how I understood was the intent. Again, but we don't know. Is it their own? They've been provided? We know that North Korea, for example, has been providing some missiles as well. And I got into the discussion, I forget with who, but initially I said, well, Iran can't hit the United States. So I said, well, if the latest missile that North Korea has, if they provided that to Iran from Tehran, that missile covers the distance to San Francisco. So they absolutely could hit New York or Washington, D.C. So, yeah, and we're getting into some, sounds like crazy territory. But again, put yourself in. Well, we know how America reacts when we get attacked on 9/11, and how we perceive that we've been attacked by this foreign threat. We go around the world to track down and kill the people responsible, ostensibly. So why did we think that they won't that Iran won't do the same thing? Sorry, my dog. Hey, quiet down. Sorry.
No, Norris. But what do you think is likely to happen now? Because again, just Iran has said they're walking away from the talks, and they more or less warned that they are prepared now to retaliate against Israel. So what do you expect to see now? Because I don't see any way to get back on the diplomatic track now. Again, I hope I'm wrong, but it's the most likely scenario now that Iran begins to launch missiles towards Israel.
Yeah.
The US will then have to decide whether or not it gets pulled back into this, and then we're back into full all-out war.
Yeah. Well, that may be very well where we're headed. And only this time, the growing economic pressures on the global economy will become more and more important. Let's note that, Trump he's been playing games with the oil, asserting that, we're America, we're energy independent. Well, we're not. Yeah, yes, with light crude. Yeah, we're energy independent with that crude, but that's used to make gasoline and maybe aviation fuel. But that price is going up because there's a 20% shortage around the world. But diesel comes from heavy crude, and the United States is a net importer of that. It imports it. It doesn't produce enough. It has to import it from Mexico, from Canada. Canada's been the number one source. Now Venezuela. Used to get it from the Saudis. Who could have got it from the Russians, but we stopped trading with the Russians on that account, and Russia's, sending more of it to China. So that's one of the reasons here in the States. I don't know what the situation is for you in Norway, the discrepancy between your, if you will, your gasoline, your petrol price, and your diesel price. But here in the United States, it's about a $2 difference, $1.50 to $2 difference, because the diesel has to be processed in a different way, and it comes from a different source. So that price is going to continue to go up. And so this is where we get into the impact of the global economy, because you've got price of computer chips going through the roof now. Why? Because the helium, 44% of it came out of Qatar. It's not coming out. and that helium is used to make computer chips. And so without the helium, you don't make computer chips. So I think this whole economic cloud that's hanging over the world will be another factor in here. I mean, we're in unprecedented territory. We don't have any historical example to point to. I don't think there's never, at least in modern history, can you point to a period, yeah, this is where we lost 25% of the liquid natural gas supply, and 20% of the oil, and 35% of the urea and sulfur used to make fertilizer, and 44% of the helium. And these go to different sectors of the economy. Never have we had that kind of shock that I can recall. And I'll leave the history judgments to you. You're far more qualified on that. But then how does that impact against the backdrop of this war that now Iran is basically, it looks like they're prepared now to reengage Israel, if for no other reason, to stop Israel from attacking Hezbollah and stop it from attacking the Lebanese.
Yeah, no, after all these years of making more efficient economies, decades of globalization, to have it all unraveled in such a rapid pace, it's very destabilizing. But often, you hear about Iran in the context of these other energy wars. For example, going after Venezuela. I keep hearing the argument, though, that the United States, as an energy exporter, will make a lot of money from these energy shortages. It will, I guess, restore some of the strength of the petrodollar, given that people will have to pay the U.S. and U.S. dollars. They refer to the ability to cut off China, of course, from Iranian energy. So it will be, energy-wise, will be good for America, bad for China as its peer competitor. Do you see any credibility to this, or is this just an oversimplification?
Yeah, it's a Western fantasy, because look at what both Russia and China have done in the last week. They've continued to increase their purchase of gold, increase their purchase of silver, and just 2 days ago, China sold off $41 billion worth of U.S. Treasury bonds. So a significant number. And this comes against time when you're having the Japanese are going to actually have to sell, because their debt situation is going so much worse. So they got to raise some cash. They sell those bonds. So the purchases of oil are increasingly being made with yuan, not with the petrodollar, but with the yuan. So the yuan's almost becoming the petro yuan. And what supply that Iran is getting out of the Persian Gulf is going into the yuan. Russia as well is selling yuan, not dollars. So the dollar is starting to come under real pressure, and you're not looking at a global economic situation that's stable and healthy. The Trump people, I think I've mentioned it on some other broadcasts, but Danny Davis did an interview with a geologist who's an oil expert named Art Berman, and he did that last Friday, and that is an outstanding. I mean, Berman really knows his stuff, and he's not political, and he's not emotional. He's just the facts guy, but when he lays these facts out, it makes you sit there and go, "Oh, I didn't know that." And so it's he thinks we're in for some real trouble, and it's been he was commenting on, like, Kevin Haslett, who's a White House advisor on the economy, and he made some claim about, the oil's going to be back down. We're going to be back to normal prices in 4 weeks or 5 weeks. And Berman said he's lying. This is just not true. So this added factor of, instead of, we're on the cusp of peace, we're going back to war. That is what the signals say, and unless we get a complete reversal in position. But we got the IRGC spokesman saying, and he's, no, he wasn't being vague at all. He's just telling, hey, you people in northern Israel, get out for your own safety. I would take that seriously.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem like a bluff when it could be, it would make any sense. But my last question is just about Israel. That is, why this enthusiasm to restart the war with Iran, though? Because as I understand it from, even statements from the IDF, they are very overextended. And they also know that the United States, irrespective of any will to support Israel, they don't actually have the capabilities. That is,
Right.
the 40-year war drained the U.S. to a large extent. If the U.S. can't achieve its objectives in terms of defeating Iran, the Israelis are already overextended. Why go into this? I mean, there's a lot to lose here at what appears to be quite predictably, a losing bet.
Okay. So your problem is you are a rational, logical person. You don't think with emotion. I'm not saying you're unemotional, but you know the difference between your brain and your heart. Israel doesn't. And I just, from my own personal experience with having worked with them, done some training, I did some training, 20 years ago for Israeli police. There is an arrogant factor where they just assume that they know more than you, that they're smarter than you, and that they know what they're doing. And even though you could objectively sit down and show them that they're wrong, they won't listen to that. And they don't think it through 2 or 3 steps ahead. And I mean, it's something as simple, and let me just illustrate with a semi-automatic pistol. Anybody that's familiar with that knows it has a magazine that holds ammunition. You put that into the magazine well, you grab the back of the slide, you pull it back, and then release it like a slingshot, and it chambers around. The Israeli army trains everybody not to do that. They walk around with an unloaded gun, and they wait until you've got a threat where you pull it out and then quickly cycle it to chamber around. Well, the reason they do that is their training is so lousy that in the past people would still shoot themselves because they'd put their finger on the trigger when they weren't supposed to. So instead of properly training them, they came up with this as a method. And so even though I can go show them with a stopwatch that doing that adds at least a half second to the time from when you draw to have to engage a target. And plus, if that target is close, with an arm's length of you, when you're up there trying to cycle your gun, they can grab it. That's just an illustration, but that same mentality is what transfers over here. That, oh yeah, we're going to go in and we're going to kill Hezbollah. We'll stop them. And then you go, but yeah, now they've got more fortifications underground after the experience of 2006, and now they're using FPV drones with fiber optic cable. You're gonna face a tougher fight. No, we're not. They're no good. They underestimate the enemy always. So I don't know if that helps explain it, but that's been my experience with them.
Yeah. Well, I see up on my screen here that Iran's IRGC announced it targeted U.S.-Israeli MSC Sariska ship with a cruise missile. So, yeah.
Here we go.
It appears so. Here we go. So, well, it seems at least more likely than not that this escalation cannot be stopped now. Again, I hope I'm wrong. But thanks again. I know you have a lot of commitments today, so I'll let you go. Thanks again for your time.
Hey, my friend, I always appreciate the invitation, Glenn. Thank you so much.
ਅੱਜ ਕਾਲਜ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਬੰਦ ਕੁੜੀਏ, ਅੱਜ ਕਾਲਜ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਬੰਦ ਕੁੜੀਏ, ਨਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਜ਼ਾਰਾਂ ਲੰਘ ਕੁੜੀਏ, ਨਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਜ਼ਾਰਾਂ ਲੰਘ ਕੁੜੀਏ। आजा मेरे कोल ठंडा पानी पियाल सा, जो तेरी मर्जी ओयो मंगाल सा। ना हो गर्मी विच तंग कुड़िए, ना हो गर्मी विच तंग कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए। इस गर्मी विच किया तू सड़दी, पानी पी पी किया तू मरदी। इस गर्मी विच किया तू सड़दी, पानी पी पी किया तू मरदी। आ छां विच बैठा संग कुड़िए, आ छां विच बैठा संग कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए। सुने नीले तले विच बैठ मेरे कोल वे, मैं भी कुछ बोला कुछ तू बोल वे। सुने नीले तले विच बैठ मेरे कोल वे, मैं भी कुछ बोला कुछ तू बोल वे। एवें खली है तू जिवें पीती भंग कुड़िए, एवें खली है तू जिवें पीती भंग कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए। इस गर्मी विच किया तू सड़दी, पानी पी पी किया है मरदी। इस गर्मी विच किया तू सड़दी, पानी पी पी किया है मरदी। आ छां विच बैठा संग कुड़िए, आ छां विच बैठा संग कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए। सुन नीले तले विच बैठ मेरे कोल वे, मैं भी कुछ बोला कुछ तू बोल वे। सुन नीले तले विच बैठ मेरे कोल वे, मैं भी कुछ बोला कुछ तू बोल वे। एवें खली है तू जिवें पीती भंग कुड़िए, एवें खली है तू जिवें पीती भंग कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, अज कालज हो गया बंद कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए, ना बीच बाजारां लंघ कुड़िए।